What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into, such as the NCAA men's volleyball season. It begins in 9 more days as I'll be breaking down 5 out of the 6 conferences and every team on whose key players are coming back and which players have departed. Also, we have some NCAA women's volleyball coaching news as we have some new hires and we have some familiar faces that are heading to certain programs. Also, the transfer portal in the NCAA women's volleyball world is up and poppin', as we have a lot of notable transfers to get into. And this is the last week of 2022. I'm going to be recapping Set Point's accomplishments and what Set Point has done this entire 2022 season. You know what to do. For the last time in 2022, hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this Monday afternoon, Monday morning, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 174 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on. IE Sports Radio can be found on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok by following them at IE Sports Radio. They're also available on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then Sports, then Radio in the search bar for those that still use Facebook. Also, IE Sports Radio has a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top, which starts at $5 a month. This will get you a shout from all of our shows, especially this one, and other donations include access to ISRU, access to our merchandise of IE Sports Radio apparel, as well as a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows all across the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. With your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Losgrade, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. With all that said and done, let us begin. So, as we all know, NCAA men's volleyball season starts in 9 more days. So, I've been preparing since last Tuesday to do this whole breakdown of all the NCAA men's volleyball conferences and their teams. So, as most of us know, the NCAA men's volleyball world has, National Collegiate is what it's called. It's not NCAA. It's called National Collegiate because NCAA men's volleyball is Division I and II. It's basically combined with one another. And also there's Division III, which I'll hopefully get into a little bit later. Before I continue, we got a shout to the live chat room on Spreaker. We have Adam Karnick popping in. He says, "Good evening, Teran. Tonight you get to be the libero, and I'll try my best to spike it home. I promise I'll be done for the rest of your show with puns. Yeah, that wasn't really the best. And normally the setter is the one that normally sets it to the pin hitter. So, yeah. And Larry B said it best, freaking Adam. And thank you, Larry B. iSports Radio would not be where it's at without set point. I appreciate you, Larry. And without you, I wouldn't be doing this whole thing. And Arthur Parsons pops into the chat room. He says, hey, Teran, have a great show. Thanks, Arthur. He just did his show approximately 7 hours ago with the Bayou Bulletin. He normally goes live on Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Central, but he went live today because yesterday was Christmas. By the way, belated Merry Christmas to everyone that basically celebrates it, and happy holidays to everyone else, and hope everyone had a safe holiday. And yes, the libero passes the ball, the setter sets the ball, and then the hitter hits the ball. Just got to clarify that for Adam and Larry in the chat room. So, all right, now let's jump on into some NCAA men's volleyball. So, all right, so there's 6 conferences in NCAA or National Collegiate Men's Volleyball. I'm just going to say NCAA Men's Volleyball because I don't care. So, there's the Conference Carolinas, there's the Northeast Conference, then there is the EIVA, the Eastern Interscholastic Volleyball Association, then there's the MIVA, the Midwest Interscholastic Volleyball Association, then there's the MPSF, the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation, and then there's the Big West Conference, which is the primary conference. So, unfortunately for Conference Carolina fans, they have not released their preseason coaches poll, so I can't do a breakdown of that. However, I did work a whole lot on all of the other conferences, and I basically have all the teams down pat when it comes to all of their returning players and departed players, with the exception of one team. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So we'll start off with the NEC, the Northeast Conference. So I'm going in chronological order of which teams basically went from teams that didn't really make it to the Final Four all the way up to teams that made the Final Four. So normally I would start off with the Conference Carolinas just because one of their teams advanced to the quarterfinals only to lose to Hawaii. But unfortunately, that team, the Conference Carolinas, has yet to release their coaches poll. So we'll start off with the NEC. So the last place team, courtesy of their coaches poll, which was released last week, it just so happens to be D'Youville. So a lot of these teams are not really aren't really in their first full year of an NCAA men's volleyball program. Some of these teams haven't even really been around the NCAA or collegiate volleyball world in a while. So D'Youville, they have a good amount of returning players. They did not lose anybody in particular that's worth noting. Some of their top players include outside hitter Jacob Malik, who led the team last year with 216 kills, and he was tied for second in blocks with 34, and he was fourth on the team in digs with 98, and he had 14 aces. Ian DeWild is another player to watch for. He was an outside hitter. He's only a sophomore. This team right here, D'Youville, is full of first-year guys. This is probably this and a few other teams are probably some of the youngest teams out there. So D'Youville was picked to finish last in the NEC preseason poll. So Ian DeWild is another player to watch for. He was second on the team last year in kills with 207, and he led the team in service aces with 20. He's only a sophomore. He's an outside hitter. Timac Berzosa is a middle blocker sophomore who is also a player to watch for. Randy Dorno, sophomore setter, is also a player to watch for. And other players to watch for who I didn't really get their stats down are Anthony Dean, the libero/setter, and he's a graduate, by the way, and Dan Busha, outside hitter, only a sophomore. So my notes for this team are still in its infancy stages as a Division 1-2 program, and they're young, but they have interesting players. So this team, it's tough for me to hate on this team just because this team has a lot of returning players, but they're so young. Most of their players are sophomores. Their only experienced player or grandpa player is Anthony Dean, who is a graduate. So he's in it using his fifth year just because the COVID year gave athletes an extra year of eligibility. So that's pretty much that for Deauville. Jumping over to Merrimack. Okay, here's the team that I don't have really notes on, just because this is actually this team's first-year program. This is the first-year program, and basically I just said this team is a first-year team. They were chosen to finish 7th in the NEC preseason coaches poll, which that's surprising because they're a first-year program, and I'm surprised they didn't put Deauville ahead of them. So Merrimack is going to have some growing pains just to start off this season, but I think they'll eventually get around. I'm not trying to put them for these players that return their notable starters. They're not going to be like the Hawaiis or the Long Beach States. They're going to be in their infancy stages of struggling teams. Next up we have is Farley Dickinson, who returns Jack Lydon, sophomore outside hitter, Grady Hoffman, sophomore libero, Artem Vertrob, sophomore outside hitter, Lorenzo Bonomo, sophomore outside hitter, Santiago Lahara, junior middle blocker, and the other players to watch for are Rui Fernandez, graduate setter, and Jose Angarita, sophomore setter. And they don't have any key losses, and again, this team is also in its infancy stages as a program, let alone a Division I and II program, but this team does look interesting. They were chosen to finish 6th in the NEC, which is understandable. Again, they haven't really been involved in too much NCAA men's volleyball action, but they could make some noise with all those returning players, within their conference at least. They're not going to, again, these teams are not going to be like the next Hawaii or the next Ball State or the UCLA or the Long Beach State. For these teams, it's going to take some time. Chosen to finish 5th in the NEC is Sacred Heart. Their standout players that they return are Patrick Mucciarino, junior outside hitter, Mark Berry, junior outside hitter, Cole Younger, junior libero/defensive specialist, Carlos Santa Cruz, junior setter/opposite, and then other key players to watch for are Dylan McClung, sophomore outside hitter, Tyler Quinta, senior libero/setter, and Teddy Payne, junior setter. And their key losses are Ifs Loverton, outside hitter, and Aaron Peterson, middle blocker. So, for my notes, I put, once this team figures out who its middle blocker is going to be, this team can do damage in its conference. Now, this team actually transitions from the EIVA over to the NEC, which is very understandable, and I think it's a good little transition for them. I think Sacred Heart is definitely going to benefit from being in this conference as opposed to being in the EIVA. Just because the EIVA is going to be run by Penn State, Princeton, and NJIT, or New Jersey Institute of Technology. Either way, Sacred Heart is basically going to be much better in this conference. They are chosen to finish 5th, so it's going to be a work in progress. Chosen to finish 4th in this conference is Damon. So the key players for this team that return are Zach Schneider, who led the team last year in kills with 257, Cameron Milligan, junior opposite/outside hitter. He was second on the team in kills with 157. Jake Cousins, opposite/middle blocker, who is a senior. Ryan Parker, senior outside hitter. And then other players to watch for are graduate setter Michael Kruger, graduate middle blocker Henry Moffitt, and senior defensive specialist/libero John Jaworski. And the key losses are only Robert Patzer. So last year, Damon managed to be a 6-2 offense. They managed to run a 6-2 offense, which is totally understandable. And for me, I think it's kind of a good strategy, having two setters. That's what a 6-2 offense is. And this team actually was pretty special. They actually participated in an independent conference tournament. It was basically a bunch of first-year programs that don't have conferences. It's basically an independent conference tournament, and then Damon made it all the way to the independent conference teams finals, only to lose to what's their face? I think it was LMU, not LMU in terms of Loyola Marymount, the LMU as in Lincoln Memorial University. So Damon managed to have a solid first season as an NCAA Division I and II program, and I think they could do pretty good this year, especially with all the returning players. So my notes for this team were a postseason experienced team that could challenge its way up to the top of the conference, which I think is quite impressive. I think they could possibly, do some damage. I'm not trying to put them on a pedestal and say that they're going to be number one or winning the national championship. I'm saying that they'll actually be making progress. As we welcome Mike Patton, the Spreaker chat room, he says, somebody told me the best volleyball podcast on the internet was on right now. Had to stop by and see for myself. Yes, thank you, Mike Pat. All right, so back to the NEC preseason coaches poll. Next up is LIU, who garnered one first-place vote and was selected to finish third in the NEC. So LIU, or Long Island University, returns Caden Satterfield, senior outside hitter, Luke Chandler, sophomore opposite, Jordan Cooper, senior outside hitter, Luca Holanda, sophomore setter, Danny Seliger, sophomore libero, and other players to watch for are Casey Cluhe, sophomore setter, Eddie Alexander, junior middle blocker, and Arthur Sewer, graduate outside hitter, who actually transferred from Charleston. So key losses for LIU are Hassan Hadzic, who was a middle blocker / opposite. So just like the other two, the first two that I mentioned, they're basically in their infancy stages of a program. And last year was its first season, and they will get a feel for this conference since it's their first year. Like last year, they played in independent, and they didn't really play in any conference tournaments or any sort of tournaments of that sort. But I think LIU, with its returning players, they could do some damage in the NEC. And then LIU is going to be under new head coach. Last year's coach, Sean Patchell, had stepped down, and unfortunately, I did not get down who their new head coach is going to be, but I'm sure he'll do wonders with the returning players. I think he was a part of the LIU coaching staff prior to this. Anyway, jumping over to the second place team, or the projected second place team in the NEC pool, that would be St. Francis Brooklyn, who garnered one first place vote. So some of their returning players include Nicola Ianelli, the senior libero. He actually was an all EIVA second team. So actually, my list also is comprised of teams that return with honors, as well as some of these teams' top players from last year. So Nicola Ianelli, he actually was all EIVA second team. Remember, St. Francis was a part of the EIVA last season before jumping over to the NEC this year. So St. Francis Brooklyn is going to have a much better time making the conference tournament and NCAA tournament in this conference as opposed to the EIVA. So other players from St. Francis that return on this team include Jack Hirschman, sophomore outside hitter, James Hannaberry, senior middle blocker, Lucas Blanco, junior setter, and then some other players to watch for are Matt Mongan, junior setter, Kenyon Tuman, graduate opposite and outside hitter, and that's it. So Kenyon Tuman, let me tell you this, he actually transferred from Penn State. That's what makes him special, and I think he can contribute well to St. Francis Brooklyn. Their key losses include David Vorfy, opposite, Andrea Lankianes, middle blocker, and Bartek Zielinski, outside hitter. So my notes for St. Francis Brooklyn are, with Tuman should contribute well to this team, and they could challenge the projected first-place team of this conference, being St. Francis. So the other St. Francis U, is actually also migrating from the EIVA, and St. Francis, their top player returning is Thomas Leahy, who's a senior middle blocker. He actually made the All-MIVA second team. And then Blake Liptando also returns. He was named All-EIVA honorable mention. He's also going to be a key contributor for this team. Also, in terms of some of their top players returning are Nathan Zinni, sophomore outside hitter, Zinni was also All-EIVA honorable mention. Then Andrew Deerdorf, sophomore outside hitter, Ryan Parker, junior setter, and then other key players to watch for are AJ Schmidt, red shirt setter, Peyton Blaine, junior libero, and Devin Voperl, sophomore middle blocker, who is 6'10". And their only key loss was Joshua Blair. And my note for St. Francis, the other St. Francis, not St. Francis of Brooklyn, was new conference, most of the same players, golden opportunity to make the NCAA tournament. So for St. Francis, not from Brooklyn, this team definitely is something special. And again, this is a team that migrates from the EIVA over to its own new conference, and now they have dubious immortality to possibly make the NCAA tournament. And this is a golden opportunity for them. It's not going to be as easy as it might be, just because some of these other young and hungry teams want to take their best shot at them, but we'll see what happens with St. Francis U. That's going to do it for the NEC preseason coaches poll breakdown. Jumping over to the EIVA, so we'll start off with the sixth place team. It's now a six-team conference. So the EIVA went from 9 teams down to just only 6, which, contrary to popular belief, the EIVA is also projected to have every team in its conference tournament. So how that's going to work is seeds 3 through 6 will play in the quarterfinals. Seeds 1 and 2 will have a bye, and then the winner of 3 through 6 takes on 2, and then the winner of 5 versus 4 takes on 1. So we'll start off with the number 6 team that's projected to finish 6th in the conference, and that is George Mason. So its top returner is Jack Bowles, redshirt junior opposite, who led the team last year in kills with 348. He was named All EIVA second team. And then Omar Hoyos, junior outside hitter, is also returning All EIVA second team, and he was second on the team in kills with 309. Troy McDonald, sophomore setter, and Zach Talamoa are also players to watch for, as well as middle blocker Lucas Mittel. And then other players to watch for are redshirt junior outside hitter Che Cooper and Colin Heath, junior outside hitter. And their only key loss was Richie Hoff. And my notes for this team are, this team has talent and potential, but they will need to establish its identity before EIVA play. So this team does have potential. I think George Mason can topple a couple teams, and I think they have what it takes to stay within reach of this conference. Do I think they're going to beat Penn State? Probably not. But I really think that George Mason is probably the best last place team of all the last place teams in every conference. Jumping over to the projected 5th place team of the EIVA coaches poll, which is Harvard, they return Ethan Smith, junior middle blocker, who was named to the All EIVA first team. And then James Barden is another returner. He is a sophomore setter. He was named to the All EIVA second team last year. And then other top players that return are Cade McGovern, sophomore opposite. And that's pretty much it. Other players to watch for are Ethan McCrary, junior middle blocker, Logan Shepard, sophomore outside hitter, and I went with a freshman for this last one, Zach Birdie, because I have seen Zach Birdie play, and I'm hoping he doesn't, and this is no offense to this person right here, I'm hoping Zach doesn't have the same experience, college volleyball experience, like his older sister Natalie. So I don't know, for some of you that don't know about this, Natalie Birdie was on that Stanford team from 2019 all the way over to 2022. She was on that national championship team back her freshman year, and she didn't really get too much playing time, which is unfortunate. And I did see her play in high school at Mater Dei. She was a beast back at Mater Dei. The only problem was that she committed very late behind some of the other Stanford commits, and she didn't really get a chance to, have that projected one-on-one time with Kevin Hambley and all the other Stanford players. So she kind of missed out on some college volleyball playing time, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen to Zach Birdie. Just because Zach Birdie is also a beast of a player. He didn't win a CIF championship, but he is a very good player. So Harvard's key losses include Campbell Scolenfield, outside hitter, Eric Lee, outside hitter, and Jason Shen, libero. So my notes for Harvard were young team, but an interesting team with key returners. I think this team has potential, and while they did lose those 3 top players, they didn't lose anyone too big. Like, other than those 3 players, they didn't lose anyone too big, and I think Harvard can make a little noise. Jumping over to the 4th place team in the EIVA preseason coaches poll is Charleston. So Charleston's top players include Lachlan Bray, graduate outside hitter. He was an All EIVA honorable mention, and that's pretty much all of their All EIVA returning players. In terms of their other top players that return, Jake Vorberger returns. He is a senior opposite. Garrett Schnitker, senior opposite, returns. And Ismail Sneed, senior middle blocker, also returns. And then graduate setter Diego Villafans returns as well. Another key players to watch for, and I only have one, and that just so happens to be Curtis Raines, sophomore libero. Their key losses include I'm hoping to pronounce this guy's name right. Jacob Osiwala, as he is an outside hitter who transferred to Limestone. And my notes for Charleston is, while not the most dynamic team, it is a team that returns a good chunk of its players. So they only lost one of those key players, as Osiwala did transfer to Limestone, and he'll be doing it big over there. But I think Charleston is a little underrated, and I think they have the potential to keep up with some of these other teams. Do I think they could make it to the semifinals of this conference tournament? Possibly. Like, between George Mason, Harvard, and Charleston, it's going to be a dogfight for fourth place. And heck, I don't even think fourth place could guarantee them a spot into the semifinals, just because the semifinals are the whole tournament is basically at one location. So it's going to be the top seed, I think, hosts. If not, it's going to rotate from each team, going from George Mason all the way up to Penn State. But that's my guess. So the third place team from the EIVA that's projected to finish third is Princeton. So Princeton was last year's EIVA tournament winner, as they managed to upset Penn State in the semifinals, and then they beat NJIT in the final. So some of Princeton's top players include Ben Harrington, who was named the EIVA Freshman of the Year, though I don't know how he was named Freshman of the Year, just because last year he was a sophomore, but I guess maybe they're not counting his freshman year since he might have gotten injured, or he chose to use his redshirt year. Either way, Harrington was named the EIVA Freshman of the Year. He was also named All-EIVA First Team, and he led the team last year in aces, digs, and kills. Nate Thompson is another player to watch for on Princeton. He is an All-EIVA honorable mention. James Hartley also is a top player to watch for. Then we have Naiheruo Omin, sophomore opposite, another player to watch for. And then their miscellaneous other players to watch for are sophomore setter Henry Wedbush, Matt Su, sophomore libero, and Gavin Lacing, junior middle blocker. And their only key loss was Joe Kelly. No, not Joe Kelly, the MLB player, Joe Kelly, the setter. So my notes for Princeton are, this team is young but underrated. Them winning the EIVA tournament was no accident. And anyone who thinks that Princeton won via a fluke is crazy, because Princeton had to take on a very tough Penn State team from last season. They went up 2-0 in the match. Penn State won the next two sets, and then Princeton ultimately won the fifth set. So I really think that Princeton earned winning the EIVA. Yes, they had a brief NCAA tournament team as they lost to North Greenville, but honestly, I think Princeton could do damage, especially with Ben Harrington. And their only top player they lost was Joe Kelly, so I think they'll be fine. The projected second place team to finish in the EIVA is NJIT, as they will be led by Julian Meisner, who was named to the All-EIVA tournament team. He is an All-EIVA first team, and he's a senior opposite. Alessandro Negri, graduate outside hitter, also returns, as he was also named All-EIVA first team. Jens Feltis, graduate outside hitter, is also a key player for NJIT, key returning player, that is, as he was named All-EIVA second team. Martin De Chavaria, senior middle blocker, also a key player that returns for NJIT, All-EIVA second team. And then Carson Williams, All-EIVA second team, also is a returning player for NJIT. And then other players to watch for are graduate setter Roque Nito, and junior setter Griffin Feisler. Both are setters, and both are going to be running the 6-2 offense. And their only key loss was Joe Kennedy. So my notes for NJIT are lots of promise in this team, and their only issue is that they don't have a libero, or they don't know who their libero is going to be. They have 0 liberos on this team. 0 liberos on this team. So other than that little blemish, I think NJIT is going to be really good, and the Jersey grit is real, especially when they're chosen to finish second in the conference. And they were the only team that challenged Penn State in the regular season. Now, obviously, we had Princeton upsetting Penn State, but they were the only team that challenged Penn State, and I had a feeling NJIT, or New Jersey Institute of Technology, was going to challenge Penn State. They have that jersey grit, and that is a scary thing. So keep an eye out for the Highlanders. So as for the first place team projected to finish in the EIVA, it is Penn State. Their only key player that they lost last year was libero Will Bantle. The other players that they return are, and I'm going to go from other players to watch for all the way up to the top. Ryan Merck, their libero, who's a sophomore. He's the only libero on their team, the only designated libero on the team. Then other players that return are Michael Valenzi, all EIVA honorable mention. Sam Marsh, graduate middle blocker, all EIVA honorable mention. Graduate setter Cole Bogner, all MIVA first team and All-American second team. Toby Ezionu, junior middle blocker, all MIVA first, all EIVA first team and All-American honorable mention. Cal Fisher, graduate opposite, all EIVA first team, All-American second team. And their top player that Penn State returns is Brett Wildman, graduate outside hitter, EIVA player of the year, all EIVA first team, All-American first team. So my notes for Penn State are, Penn State is a top 5 team when healthy with the amount of talent they return. And for Penn State, last year was such a heartbreaking disappointment. Like, if they did not lose in the semifinals of the EIVA tournament, I think this team actually gets into the NCAA tournament. Like, they, along with UCLA, were the first two out, which is a bummer. Long Beach State obviously got one of the at-large bids, and then UCLA, being the host school, also got one of the at-large bids. So for Penn State, I hear the NCAA tournament has expanded its tournament field. It's not just going to be, what was it, like 7 teams last year? It's going to be like more than 7 teams. So, because 5 of the at-large, or 5 of the conference champions, and then there was also 2 at-larges, so it should be an expanded tournament field. I think it might go 8 teams, but I have not gotten confirmation on that. So that's that for the EIVA preseason coaches poll. So jumping over to the MIVA. So last year the MIVA produced Ball State going to the national semifinals. They actually had 2 first-round byes, or 2 byes, all the way up to the semifinals, where Ball State unfortunately lost to the eventual champion, Hawaii. So we're going to start from the bottom, and we're going to start with Quincy, that was picked to finish last in the MIVA preseason poll. So Quincy's top players include Raj Aileen, sophomore opposite, Dominic Waggle, sophomore libero, Jonas Holzinger, senior setter, and their other players to watch for are Eddie Jakubaskas, senior outside hitter. Their key losses include Nathan Lawton, opposite, Manuel Hernandez, outside hitter, Francisco Salinger, outside hitter, and Cooper Coleman, middle blocker. My notes for Quincy are harsh, but it's true. My notes for Quincy basically are, Quincy is in for another long year. So this is not me trying to be disrespectful to Quincy. I think Quincy has potential. The problem is they lost so much of their talent to graduation. It's going to be a rebuilding year for Quincy. I don't want that to happen, and I'm not trying to be mean, but this is going to be a long year for Quincy. Who knows, though? Maybe they can upset some teams. Jumping over to the projected 7th place team in the MIVA, which is Lindenwood. So their top players include A.J. Lewis, senior outside hitter, who was all MIVA second team. Then their other top players that they return are Kyle Deutschman, senior libero, Connor Sheehan, junior setter. And their other players to watch for are Clay Whiter, redshirt sophomore outside hitter, Caden Warner, sophomore middle blocker, and Carter Stenmark, redshirt freshman outside hitter. Key losses for Lindenwood include Diego Negron, outside hitter, Phil Swartz, outside hitter, Alex Papas, middle blocker, and Jeremy Kirch, opposite. So my notes for Lindenwood include, this team needs to establish its identity to aid A.J. Lewis. So A.J. Lewis is a great player, all MIVA conference team, being the second team. However, it can't just be him. Otherwise, this team is going to suffer from Lewis syndrome. not AJ Lewis syndrome, but this team is going to suffer from Lewis of Romeo syndrome from last year, where they just had one player doing all the grunt work and they didn't have anyone to build around him. So Lindenwood has to find its identity to help AJ Lewis out. Otherwise, this is going to be another long year for Lindenwood as well. Sixth place team that's projected in the MIVA is Purdue of Fort Wayne. So Purdue of Fort Wayne, for those of you that remember, they managed to waltz their way into the MIVA Conference Championship, where they lost to Ball State in 4 sets. We also welcome Davidson Crooks in the chat room on Spreaker. He says, "What's good?" So Purdue of Fort Wayne, they returned John Dydrich, who was an All-MIVA first team, an All-American honorable mention, and he led the team last year with 434 kills, and he was just a baller. He was the biggest bright spot for Purdue of Fort Wayne last year. Bryce Walker, junior middle blocker, was also named All-MIVA second team. And then other top players that Purdue of Fort Wayne has are Zach Solomon, sophomore setter, and Sergio Carrillo, graduate setter. So both those two setters that I just mentioned, they're going to be a part of the 6-2 offense. Solomon actually was the biggest piece of the 6-2 offense, as he had most of the grunt work. By the way, Sergio Carrillo actually transferred from North Greenville, so that's why I put him down as a big player to watch for. Because if you remember, North Greenville managed to win their first NCAA tournament match last season against Princeton. So for North Greenville to win their first conference championship in its inaugural season and to make it all the way to the second round where they lost to the eventual champion Hawaii, that's big right there. And I think Sergio Carrillo can really do some damage for Purdue of Fort Wayne's offense. Other key players to watch for are 6'9" sophomore outside hitter Axel Melendez-Watts and senior outside hitter / opposite Carlos Mercado. Their key losses are Troy Gooch, libero, Vicente Ibarra, outside hitter, Rico Wardlow, middle blocker, and Sean Califf, setter, which in reality does not sound like a big loss to me just because they did bring in Sergio Carrillo. So Purdue Fort Wayne is going to be running a 6-2 offense. However, my notes are this team needs to find its number 2 hitter behind John Dydrich. So for John Dydrich, he can't carry the team by himself. He's only one player, and otherwise, if Purdue Fort Wayne turns him into, I forget the middle blocker's name, something Mitchum from last year, I really will not be pleased with Purdue Fort Wayne because John Dydrich cannot carry the team as Tyler Mitchum. If Purdue Fort Wayne turns John Dydrich into Tyler Mitchum, I will not be pleased. I will rip Purdue Fort Wayne like I ripped Lewis last year. They were chosen to finish 6th, and I think everyone's going to give them the underdog mentality. Remember, this team was the underdog last year, and they managed to upset, what was it, McKendree, and then they also upset Loyola in the semifinals of the MIVA tournament. And they gave Ball State all that they can handle. Unfortunately, it was just not enough. And Purdue Fort Wayne, again, they deserve so much credit for last year. But how are they going to build around John Dydrich? How are they going to make sure that he doesn't have to take swing after swing after swing? Because that is very damaging on the arms and the shoulder. Speaking of McKendree was chosen to finish 5th in the MIVA. They return Francisco Comas, their graduate libero, who led the team last year in digs with 185. He was also All-MIVA second team, but he is their only All-MIVA player that returns from last year. For a team that finished 3rd in the MIVA standings, they didn't really get too many players that they returned. So, big yikes, McKendree. Kevin Shuley, sophomore outside hitter, is a player to watch for, as well as Daniel Dugan, redshirt senior middle blocker. And then other players to watch for are redshirt junior setter Tyler Polson, redshirt senior middle blocker Jacob Gall, and Cesar Contreras, a junior outside hitter. Their key losses include Ethan Carroll, Patrick Ross, and Ryan Serrano. Ethan Carroll and Patrick Ross were their two-headed monster. With those two, McKendree was indeed a top team in the MIVA. Without them, it's going to be a little bit of a rebuild. So my notes for them are this team will need to adjust without Carroll, Ross, and Serrano before MIVA play. And for a good reason, just because now that those two are gone, they're going to have to wonder who's going to be the guy, who's going to be the one that carries the team. Well, not carries the team, but who's going to be that number 1 and number 2 option. It's looking like it's going to probably be Shuley and Dugan, but it still remains to be seen. So the projected 4th place team from the MIVA is Lewis of Romeoville. They are moving on from the Tyler Mitchum era, so they won't have to force him to be the Mr. Do-It-All guy offensively. So one of their top players that return are Kevin Calling, senior setter, All-MIVA second team, and All-American honorable mention. So that's their only player that returns with honors on their team. The rest don't have honors that return. But their other top players that return are John Davis, redshirt junior outside hitter, Cole Brillhart, redshirt senior outside hitter, Jason Gibbs, redshirt senior outside hitter / libero. And then their other players to watch for are Max Roque, sophomore outside hitter, and Michael Sack, junior middle blocker. And their key loss was Tyler Mitchum. And my notes for Lewis's key to success is to get all their hitters involved and not one. They have a solid player core overall, solid returning players overall, but for me, they have to make sure they have other players carrying the load. They have to have a balanced effort. It just can't be one player. Like, if they have to have one player carrying the team just because the others are putting up dud numbers offensively, then so be it. But they can't be on a nightly basis. Otherwise, the other team is going to figure out how to shut down that other player, and then Lewis is going to be at the mercy of some of these other big teams. Just because Lewis had some good wins last year. I remember they beat UCLA, which was a huge win. UCLA on the road, mind you. But other than that, they had some dud losses as well. So for Lewis, this is going to be an interesting year without Tyler Mitchum. Do I think this team can go deep? No. Do I think this team can do damage in the MIVA? Absolutely. So the third place team projected in the MIVA is Ohio State. So Ohio State, shout out to Kevin Birch, the former guest on Set Point. He has a lot of returning players to work with, such as Jacob Pasteur, All-MIVA first team, All-American honorable mention, led the team last year in kills with 417. And he also has Samuel Clark, senior middle blocker, to aid him as he was All-MIVA second team. And then Noah Platfoot returns, junior setter. Cole Young, sophomore middle blocker, also returns. And their other players to watch for are Thomas Poole, junior libero. And I kind of went on a limb and said Jimmy Webb, junior opposite. I didn't really want to pick who was going to be their top player in terms of the opposite, just because they have Jacob Pasteur as one of their returning players, and they have two middles. So I wanted to give a little love to the opposite. And then their key loss was Martin Lallemand, who is an outside hitter. And then they also lost their libero as well. It was not Parker Van Buren, but it was Parker something. Either way, they lost their libero as well. So my notes for Ohio State are, with returning pieces from last year's team, Ohio State can contend in the MIVA. And that is big right there. Having Jacob Pasteur is huge for this team, and he's only a junior. Samuel Clark and Cole Young are a great middle blocker duo, with one having experience and one still learning. And then Noah Platfoot has been stellar at setter. The only thing that Ohio State's going to have to reestablish is their right side as well as their libero. But other than that, Ohio State is solid. And then the second place projected team in the MIVA is Loyola of Chicago. Their returning player, or their top returning player, is Parker Van Buren. He was the MIVA Newcomer of the Year last year. He was the All-MIVA first team, All-American honorable mention, and he had 357 kills while hitting 334. Cole Schlothauer also finished second on the team in kills with 184, despite not playing a full season. And Nick Martinsky is also a player to watch for. By the way, Schlothauer was All-MIVA first team. And then other players to watch for on Loyola are Matt Oakley, the libero, Dan Mangun, the redshirt sophomore setter, Jimmy Meinhardt, the junior middle blocker, and Nicodemus Meyer, the sophomore middle blocker. Their key losses include Garrett Zolg, the setter opposite, Henry Payne, outside hitter, and Andrew Lyons, outside hitter. So my notes for this team are, replacing Garrett Zolg is going to take some time, but this team has some good key pieces. So I think Loyola is going to be good this year. Obviously, it's going to be the new era of the John Hawks program, but I think Loyola of Chicago is probably is definitely the second best team in the MIVA. I think they're probably the best bet to challenge Ball State, who indeed was chosen to finish first in the MIVA, which I want to say they managed to garner 3 first-place votes, while Loyola of Chicago garnered 2 first-place votes, and Ohio State managed to garner 3 first-place votes, which I think is pretty impressive. But Ball State was chosen to finish first in the preseason coaches poll. Get this, first through third, Ball State had 56 points. They had 2 more than Loyola of Chicago and 3 more than Ohio State. So 1 through 3 is going to be a dogfight. And you never know with what McKendree and Lewis could pull. So Ball State's top returning player is Caleb Jennis, graduate outside hitter. He was the MIVA Player of the Year last year, All-MIVA First Team, All-American First Team, and this dude had a hitting percentage of .398 while hitting 414 kills. Then also Felix Egharevba, graduate middle blocker. He returns. He was all MIVA second team. Vanis Buckholz, middle blocker, also returns. That's pretty much it. They only have 2 returning players in terms of their all MIVA honors, as well as their honors in general. And then other players to watch for on Ball State include Dyer Ball, junior opposite, Griffin Satterfield, freshman setter, 6'7", by the way, and Bryce Brent, senior outside hitter. And then their key losses include Angelos Mandelaris, opposite, Quinn Isaacson, their setter, Nick Martinsky, outside hitter, and Colin Encelaco, their libero. So my notes for Ball State are, while having Caleb Jennis is huge for them, they still need to figure out their identity in terms of their setter and libero. So they have some good key pieces for this year in terms of their middle blocker, and I want to say they've got their middle block, or their opposite, figured out with Dyer Ball. But who's going to be their libero and who's going to be their setter? Like, that was one of the things that I struggled to have in terms of who their returners are going to be, and who their top players in terms of their setter is going to be. I think Ball State can definitely repeat, but it just can't be the Caleb Jennis show. Again, it's so tough to exemplify how good Ball State can really be, just because they have that one top player and then they have another good middle blocker as well. But they definitely have the potential. Like, Caleb Jennis, it just can't be him by himself. Like, Ball State cannot turn Caleb Jennis into Tyler Mitchum. I know I'm using that comparison a whole lot, but it's like Ball State just can't lean on Caleb Jennis. And there's a reason why volleyball is a team sport. Just because you have other players that could produce offensive numbers. You just can't lean on one guy. So jumping over to the MPSF, we only have 2 more conferences, don't worry. So in terms of the MPSF, the projected last place team in the MPSF is Concordia Irvine. Their key players to watch for they have no returning players with honors, by the way. Their key players to return are Uriel Batista, senior opposite, Max McCullough, sophomore middle blocker, Makai Lipsum, sophomore setter, and Harold Gill, senior middle blocker. Other players to watch for on Concordia Irvine are Danny Smithers, sophomore libero, and Mason Mullins, redshirt senior middle blocker. Their key losses include Owen Chun, outside hitter, Jonathan Carlson, outside hitter, and Mott McLean, setter. So my notes for Concordia Irvine are rather simple. Could experience growing pains, and they'll need to find their identity. Long story short, this is going to be one long season for Concordia. I don't want to say that they're going to be bad. They did take a huge big step in winning conference games. I think they beat UC San Diego as well, or was it Grand Canyon? Either way, Concordia did pull off a decent win last year, but that was kind of it. Like, it's going to be a little bit of a rocky year for Concordia unless Uriel Batista has to basically be Superman. Or they just get off to a string of a hot start. So the 6th place team projected in the MPSF is BYU. So BYU's top players include Mike Romanis, sophomore outside hitter, who was named to the All-MPSF freshman team. And then Capono Brown is another player to watch for, junior opposite. Mitchell Worthington, senior libero, is also another player to watch for. Then we have Slawinski Bartosz, junior setter, and Tion Taylor, sophomore middle blocker. Other players to watch for on BYU are Julian Gavin, junior middle blocker. And that's their only other top player that they have. Their key losses include David Gardini, who was Mr. Everything for BYU last year, and Alex Hasu. And my notes for BYU are very young, mainly freshmen and sophomores, and they could experience growing pains. It's not going to be could experience growing pains. They're going to be experiencing growing pains. BYU kind of fell from grace ever since the spring of 2021. So, yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the Cougars, unless, of course, again, they get off to a hot start. So chosen to finish 5th in the MPSF is USC. And Larry, if you're still listening, I'm sorry that USC has to be chosen to finish 5th in the MPSF. Well, actually, they're tied for 4th. They were chosen to finish tied for 4th, but they have USC down below the other 4th place recipient. So some of USC's top players that they return are Simon Gallus, redshirt junior outside hitter / opposite. He led the team last year in kills with 453, yet he got no honors. It doesn't make sense. This dude put up monster numbers, and yet he got no All-American honors, and he got no conference team honors. Like, that's ridiculous. I know it's tough to pick certain players from certain teams just because it's a limited amount of numbers, but I don't know, man. I think USC should have gotten Simon Gallus on the All-MPSF team. Other players that they have are Kevin Cobrin, redshirt senior opposite. He actually transfers from UCLA. He's actually the second Cobrin to transfer from UCLA to USC during their COVID year. He was an All-MPSF first team, an All-American second team, and he had some good numbers for UCLA last year. And then USC also has Lucas Frazran returning. He is a senior middle blocker / opposite. And he was 3rd in kills on USC last year with 181. And there are other players to watch for. Okay, this was very tough to pick who their other players to watch for were, as I struggled immensely trying to find other players on USC to watch for. The players that I think that you should watch for on USC are Dylan Klein and Noah Roberts. Both are freshmen and both are outside hitters. I'm not saying that, okay, for Noah Roberts, I've seen him play and he could put that ball down. For Dylan Klein, the reason I put him on players to watch for are A, he's a former guest on Set Point, and B, he is also a beast of a player, and I think he could work his way into the starting rotation. I think Dylan Klein can actually contribute to USC's offense like he did with Loyola. I mean, Dylan Klein was able to contribute as a freshman before he got hurt a little, but I think Dylan Klein can do some damage with USC. I really hope he does get that chance. Now, USC had a lot of key losses, as they lost their setter Curtis Hall, their outside hitter Sam Cobrin, their libero Cole Paxson, their outside hitter Brandon Browning, and their middle blocker Liam Schroeder. So my notes for USC are, lost a lot of notable players to graduation, but could make some noise. Starting setter position is up in the air. And they have, I think they have one player that transferred from, I think, a junior college, who is 6'6". Then they have 2 freshman setters who are both phenomenal. So anyone could be the start. Anyone who's a setter on USC right now could be the starting setter for USC next year. Jumping over to the other tied for 4th place team in the MPSF, or projected to be tied for 4th in the MPSF, that would be Grand Canyon. Their top player that they return is Camden Gianni, redshirt junior outside hitter. Made the All-MPSF first team, All-American honorable mention, and he led the team in kills with 348, and he also led the team in service aces with 49, as he set a program record, which was quite nice. Christian Jenke also garnered All-MPSF honors, being second team All-MPSF, and he garnered All-American second team honors. He finished second on the team in kills with 297, and he hit 336. Other players to watch for on Grand Canyon are Cole Udall, redshirt senior libero, Nick Slight, redshirt sophomore setter, and the other miscellaneous players to watch for on Grand Canyon are Colin Lovejoy, senior middle blocker, and Jordan Lucas, freshman outside hitter. So the Jordan Lucas was a phenomenal talent on Los Altos before he transferred over to. I'm actually blanking on the team that he transferred his senior year to, but it wasn't Thousand. Was it Thousand Oaks? I think it was. Yeah, it was Thousand Oaks. Yeah, so he transferred to Thousand Oaks, but either way, he was on Los Altos mainly before transferring to Thousand Oaks. But Jordan Lucas is a phenomenal player. I think he can do some damage with Grand Canyon in his first year. Some key losses for Grand Canyon are Hugo Fisher, opposite, and Kyle Thompson, middle blocker. And my notes for Grand Canyon are, this team can make a lot of noise with Camden Gianni and Christian Jenke leading the way. So last year they had lots of potential, but they didn't really live up to its expectations. I mean, yes, they play in a very tough conference in the MPSF, but they left a lot of meat on the bone, in my opinion. Projected to finish third in the MPSF is Stanford, as they return the man, the myth, the legend, Will Rotman, who was All-MPSF Tournament Team, All-MPSF First Team, and All-American First Team. This dude had 472 kills, and he had 33 service aces, which led Stanford in both those categories. Other players to watch for on Stanford are Nathan Lightsky, senior setter, Kevin Lamp, senior outside hitter, Justin Louis, libero, redshirt senior libero, Luke Turner, junior outside hitter, and Ethan Hill, junior middle blocker. Other players to watch for on this team are Nathan Gates, senior middle blocker, and Adam Chain, senior middle blocker. Key losses for Stanford are none. Yes, Stanford, I said this on Twitter via the Set Point account, Stanford is definitely a team to watch for, and their success was no accident. Them beating UCLA in the regular season, no accident. Them beating USC twice, no accident. Them making all the way to the MPSF finals, no accident. Them almost reverse sweeping Pepperdine in the MPSF finals, no accident. Stanford is set this year. They are probably a dark horse this year in terms of winning the NCAA championship. And I said in my notes, a very promising team that returns a majority of its stars, and they could be an under-the-radar team. I really think that this team can do damage, and I know we have the UCLA and the Pepperdine, but honestly, Stanford's success was absolutely no accident. All those things I said about Stanford, there was no accident. Davidson says Grand Canyon has really built up their sports programs over the years. Facts, Davidson. And Larry says GCU is a legit sports school now. Yes, I agree, and I think they're going to be putting Arizona on the map, primarily in volleyball. So the second place team, the team that was projected to finish second in the MPSF is Pepperdine, last year's MPSF tournament champion. Their players that they return include Jalen Jasper, graduate outside hitter, All-American honorable mention, and All-MPSF honorable mention, which I think is ridiculous. But Pepperdine, they finished third in the conference, and then they managed to win their way up to the conference. So in the MPSF's defense, that they maybe could have. Maybe Jalen Jasper got snubbed, but it is what it is. Bryce Dvorak is also a top player that returns for Pepperdine. All-MPSF second team, MPSF tournament MVP, and All-American second team. Junior setter, by the way. He is one crafty setter as well. He is injured, and I don't know when he's going to return, but Pepperdine is hoping to get him back by the time the season begins, so keep that in mind. Jacob Steele, redshirt junior, opposite, is also a player to watch for. All-MPSF tournament team and All-MPSF honorable mention last year. He also didn't get to play in the Long Beach State scrimmage or Long Beach State fall tournament, but he is projected to be one of Pepperdine's top players. Also, Trey Cole is a player to watch for, as he was fourth on the team in digs last year with 139. And then other players to watch for on Pepperdine are Aiden Toon, freshman outside hitter, who I saw really excel in the Pepperdine Long Beach State scrimmage in the fall, and Anderson Fuller, junior middle blocker. Pepperdine's key losses include Austin Wilmot, middle blocker, and Spencer Wickens, outside hitter. So Pepperdine, my notes are, could defend its conference tournament crown, and debatably the best setter in the conference. There is no doubt that Bryce Dvorak is the best setter. He's not only a very good setter, he serves the ball really well. He serves it really tough. And once he gets a string of like one or two serves going, you can't really stop him. And you have to have really good serve receive in order to stop Bryce Dvorak. Otherwise, you're going to be finding yourself in a big hole early and often. And then the projected first place team in the MPSF is UCLA. They return Ethan Champlin, their junior outside hitter, all NCAA tournament team from last year, first team all MPSF, first team all American. This dude was just dynamic. Miles Partain is also another top returner, MPSF player of the year from last year, first team all American. Merrick McHenry also returns. He was first team all American. Ito David also returns, MPSF honorable mention, MPSF all MPSF freshman team. Guy Guinness also returns, second team all MPSF, second team all American, and then other players to watch for on UCLA. I kind of already named most of the top players, but they're notable players that I think you all should watch for are Alex Knight, senior outside hitter, Cole Ketrazinski, senior outside hitter / opposite, Grant Sloan, redshirt sophomore outside hitter, who was also named to the All-MPSF freshman team, and Andrew Rowan, freshman setter. So Andrew Rowan is a very special player. I know he's going to have to play behind Miles Partain, who is also a setter, but I think he could work his way into the starting rotation just because he's 6'7", and he has a wicked deadly serve. I've seen his serve in his high school days at J. Sarah. This dude was the face of J. Sarah when it came to boys volleyball. What sucks is that J. Sarah played in such a tough league, being the Trinity League, and everyone else was like better than J. Sarah, which is sad, but it is true. So my notes for UCLA are, the conference team that returns the most players with honors. Don't be surprised to see this team winning big matches. Anything short of this team winning its conference tournament or making the NCAA tournament semifinals is considered an embarrassment. Like, it would be just as bad as if UCLA were to lose the Sun Bowl, the Tony the Tiger Bowl in football, but I digress on that. So UCLA has so much to work with. They have a majority of their players that have returned. And I guess I should also mention that one of the other key losses for UCLA were Cole Pender and Kevin Coburn. But that's quite all right. They returned so many top players for this year. So I think UCLA is set. There's no excuse for them. Like, you can't think of an excuse of how they can't make it all the way, other than if they get bitten by the injury bug, then that could be it. Anyway, now for the last one, the Big West Conference. We are already an hour into this, so I'm going to try to skim through this very quick. So, for UC San Diego, they were chosen to finish 6th in the conference. Ryan Kahn returns for the Tritons. Matthew Lim is the only returning player for this team in terms of other talent. He was named to the All-Big West freshman team. He did not put up the biggest numbers, but he was named to the All-Freshman team for the Big West, I guess. Other players to watch for are Gabe Dyer, sophomore setter, and I really had a tough time picking which players were going to be the ones that are going to lead UC San Diego, because you're about to see how many players UC San Diego lost. And they lost a lot. They lost Kyle McCauley, their All-American outside hitter, Matt Palma, their libero, Logan Clark, their middle blocker, Wyatt Harrison, their outside hitter, and Shane Bennett, their middle blocker. I guess a player to watch for on UC San Diego would be Sam Warren. I have seen, but this is me being a little biased just because I did see Sam Warren play last year at Orange Coast College. Well, the last 2 years at Orange Coast College. But if he can adapt well to Brad Rostratter's coaching system, then he'll be set. And Brad Rostratter is the first-year head coach. He takes over for Kevin Ring, who stepped down or was shown the door after, more than 20 years at the helm. So it sucks for Kevin Ring, but it also sucks for Brad Rostratter because he has to coach in a conference which he has a lot of the fewest returning players in terms of returning honors. So my notes for UC San Diego are, life without Kyle McCauley and last year's seniors will take getting used to. And this is no diss to UC San Diego. I think they have potential, but they're going to need to reestablish themselves as a team and who their number 2 hitter is going to be behind Ryan Kahn. And number 3 hitter behind Matthew Lim. So there's that. Chosen to finish 5th in the Big West is Northridge or CSUN. Kyle Hobus is one of their top returning players. He was All Big West first team. Griffin Walters, outside hitter junior. He is also a returning player for CSUN. Jonathan Donathan Constable is another player to watch for. All Big West freshman team, only a sophomore setter. Olumide Allen, sophomore middle blocker, is also another player to watch for. He made the All Big West freshman team. Another players to watch for on CSUN are Talon Cook, the libero, a senior. Luke Kramarzik, senior opposite. And Logan Pohl, freshman middle blocker, who is 7 feet. And their key losses are Daniel Wetter. So my notes for CSUN are rising talent, but will struggle against other talented teams. Yeah, CSUN is going to be in for a little bit of a long year. Last year they had a lot of young talent. This year is probably going to be that same thing. But CSUN will be good in the near future. It's just that everyone else is probably going to be good in the near future as well. Slated to finish 4th in the Big West Conference is UC Santa Barbara. Ryan Wilcox is their returning player. He led the team last year in kills with 338. He is a senior outside hitter. Donovan Todorov, redshirt junior middle blocker, is also a player to watch for. He was All Big West first team last year and All-American honorable mention. Other players to watch for on UC Santa Barbara are Dane Chalmers, redshirt junior outside hitter, Brandon Hicks, senior middle blocker, Jack Walmer, sophomore setter who transferred from Hawaii, and Max Gordon, sophomore libero. Their key losses include Patrick Paragas, their setter, and Zhao Haoshin, their opposite. My notes for UC Santa Barbara are, needs to find its libero between Jaden Glenn and Max Gordon. They only have 2 liberos listed. Starting setter is also up in the air. Yeah, I could see Santa Barbara having some growing pains early on. But remember, Santa Barbara had some growing pains early on last year as they lost to USC twice, but then they beat Penn State, swept Penn State, and then they beat Ohio State, and they basically were not the worst team in the Big West Conference. They challenged Long Beach State and Hawaii. They just fell short. So for UC Santa Barbara, this is going to be a year of trying to re-find its identity. To the third place team projected to finish there in the Big West Conference, that is UC Irvine. So their players to watch for are Francesco Sani, junior outside hitter, who was All-American honorable mention and All Big West first team. Hilaire Heno, senior outside hitter, All-American honorable mention, All Big West first team, and All Big West freshman team. He returns. And sophomore outside hitter, not senior outside hitter. Cole Gillis, redshirt junior outside hitter, also a player to watch for. Cole Powers, senior libero, also to watch for after transferring from UCLA the past 2 seasons. And then Doug Dahm, redshirt junior outside hitter, another player to watch for. And another couple players to watch for on UC Irvine are Connor Campbell, redshirt junior middle blocker, and Joe Carlos, redshirt junior setter. So for Joe Carlos, he actually transfers from Pepperdine, where he had a couple of years off due to some health conditions, from what I heard. So there's that right there. UC Irvine has no key losses. They had 4 or 5 seniors last year. None of them had put up the biggest numbers. My notes for UC Irvine are, it has plenty of potential with the amount of returning players it has, and they have the toughest schedule in the nation, according to David Niffen. So that toughest schedule in the nation, that's going to benefit them for Big West Conference play, because Hawaii and Long Beach State are the 2 juggernauts of this conference. And I think UC Irvine can do some damage. I really think that they can get to the semifinals of the Big West Conference tournament, just like they did last year. So second projected to finish in the Big West Conference is Long Beach State. Spencer Olivier returns for this team. All-American honorable mention, All Big West honorable mention, redshirt senior outside hitter. Clark Godbold, All Big West Conference first team, All-American second team, junior outside hitter. He returns. Mason Briggs, junior libero, All-American first team and All Big West Conference first team. He returns. Aiden Knipe, redshirt junior setter, All-American second team honors. Long Beach State also got a key player in terms of the transfer portal, Sotiris Sapianis, sophomore outside hitter. He transfers from Ohio State, where he was named the 2021 MIVA Newcomer of the Year. Last year, he got injured and he didn't get to play, and then I guess he decided to basically transfer. Other players to watch for on Long Beach State include Shane Holdaway, senior middle blocker, Grant Maroki, senior middle blocker, and Calvin Sanborn, outside hitter. He is mainly a serving specialist, but he can be a possible outside hitter. We'll see. And Long Beach State's only key loss was Alex Nikolov, who is playing professionally overseas. And he was the National Freshman of the Year, and he basically won every award. So my notes for Long Beach State are, despite the loss of Alex Nikolov, this team is primed to challenge and contend with Hawaii, who is projected to finish first in the Big West Conference, as they have no key losses. Their top players include Spiros Chakas, Jakob Tele, Dimitrios Mouchilas, Guilherme Voss, Brett Stewart, Chaz Galloway, and Cole Hoagland. I didn't even bother putting other players to watch for, because those are their key players. I guess if they did lose a key player, it was Jack Walmer, who was in their starting serving rotation every now and then. And he did have a nice little serve, and I think he served for championship point against Long Beach State, if I'm not mistaken. And my notes for Hawaii are, Hawaii is primed for another championship run. This team is set for the next 2 years. Hawaii has had only sophomores, a majority of sophomores in their starting lineup last year. Now those sophomores are now juniors. And that's the scary thing about this team. They're still learning, and they're eventually going to put Hawaii on the map even more. And if they were able to win the national championship with those players last year, I have a whole lot of idea of what they're going to do this year. Now, UC Irvine and Long Beach State are both contenders in the Big West Conference. However, I think Hawaii is set for the next 2 years. And with all that returning talent, I didn't even read their honors, and I'm not going to, just because for me, that's going to eat up a lot of time, at least like 4 minutes or so. But for me, Hawaii is legit this year. I don't think that there's too much. I mean, their only flaw or weakness is probably lack of senior leadership, but those players last year that I mentioned, they were all playing throughout the entire season and in that national championship run. So for Hawaii, they are set. They are them. They are that team that is going to do some damage. But I expect Long Beach State and UC Irvine to contend. And you can't sleep on UCLA from the MPSF, and you can't sleep on Penn State, who is also going to be good. And Ball State is another team that Hawaii is going to play. Ball State and Hawaii square off in the first week for Hawaii at Hawaii. And then they also have, Penn State and UCLA in the Outrigger tournament. And then, obviously, Big West Conference is going to be big for this team. So I really think that Hawaii is primed for a big-time year, but we'll see what happens with them. All right, so that's going to do it for the NCAA Men's Volleyball Conference Tournament preseason coaches poll breakdown. We're going to take ourselves a quick break. When we come back, we will have some NCAA Women's Volleyball coaching news, as well as some NCAA Women's Volleyball transfer portal news. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, such as the Show That Never Sleeps, which covers New York and New Jersey sports. That is hosted by Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss. Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson covers Las Vegas sports. And Chi-Town Weekly, which will be going on in approximately 40 minutes, covers all things Chicago sports. So we actually had a question in the live chat room from Jason Saul. He says, will you still cover the Conference Carolinas? Yes, I will. They will get their own little breakdown segment of the coaches' polls. I promise you they will get their own little thing. I was unable to find the coaches' poll for the Conference Carolinas. I promise you I will cover it. It'll probably be next week if they do break out the coaches' polls, and hopefully they do, just because the volleyball season begins next week, in about 9 days to be exact. So thank you for asking that question, Mr. Saul. So back to the second part of Set Point. So we're going to jump over to the NCAA women's volleyball side of things, and let's just go over the transfer news. As we'll go over the transfers, and again, just to make sure I'm not boring you all to death with every other transfer, I'm going to go over the notable transfers. So we'll start off with Desiree Becker, middle blocker, as she is a graduate from Northwestern. She was big time for Northwestern, as there was a reason why Northwestern had a phenomenal year. Not just because of Temi Thomas Ilara, it was also because of Becker, as she is a graduate student, she's a middle blocker, and she's going to look to try to end her collegiate year with a bang. And hopefully she does find her way to a great program. She was one of the top players on Northwestern in kills and blocks, so there's that little bit of news right there. In terms of other transfer news, Anna Dodson from UCLA, she's actually announced where she will be going in terms of next season, and she'll actually be staying with UCLA. So she said in a little press release, "I would not be the person I am today without being a Bruin for the past 4 years. You have welcomed me with open arms and made LA my home. I am beyond grateful for the endless love and support from my family, friends, teammates, staff, and UCLA community during this journey. And just to skip through everything else, I've decided to stay where my heart is, and I will be returning to UCLA next season. So, in my conversations with Coach Alfie Reft, it is clear how much he cares about this program and his student athletes. He is the epitome of a leader with his passion for the sport. With this team and his leadership, I am confident we will be back on the national stage where UCLA belongs. So, that's actually great to see from Anna Dodson. And honestly, if Anna Dodson did not return to UCLA, I don't know if UCLA would have a future. Okay, that sounds a little grim, but they did lose Charity Looper, who was practically everything for UCLA for the most part. If Anna Dodson didn't return, I don't know where UCLA would be. They would be up a creek without a paddle. But for Anna Dodson to return is amazing, and I'm happy she decided to go back to UCLA and basically try to get UCLA back to its national stage. Because remember, UCLA was one of the top three teams, or one of the three teams that missed the NCAA tournament. They were the first three out. I'm still so used to saying first four out, but NCAA decided to only make it first three out. I have qualms with that. Anyway, so a few days ago on the 23rd, Carter Booth actually entered the transfer portal, and she eventually found her way into Big Ten country, but elsewhere, as she actually transferred to Wisconsin. So this news was broken yesterday as she announced on her Instagram that she transferred to Wisconsin from Minnesota. That's a huge get for Wisconsin just because, well, Wisconsin, they lose Danielle Hart to graduation, but they still have Anna Smrek. So for Carter Booth to transfer, that's huge right there. And she put up some decent numbers, and she's only a freshman, so she's got at least 3 more years, barring if she wants to take the COVID year. So I think Wisconsin getting Carter Booth is huge. She's 6'7", middle blocker, and she is the daughter of Calvin Booth, the former NBA player. So that's huge for Carter Booth. What I will say for Minnesota fans is this. Please don't be disrespectful about her decision. Please don't banter her, because she also released a little bit of a statement saying, I know it was a difficult decision to leave Minnesota, but please respect my decision. If you're a Minnesota fan and you are berating her just because she transferred to a conference opponent, you are getting the dumb of the week. I don't care who you are. You can't just berate an athlete just because she transferred. I understand it's difficult, but what if Carter Booth transferred just because Minnesota didn't have the graduation program for her or anything of that sort? What if she wants to be a certain major at Wisconsin that Minnesota didn't have at their school? I'm just saying, I hate that fans have to get ugly with players and leave derogatory comments. That's what I'm assuming is happening, and the fact that she had to say, please respect my decision, is a red flag that someone said people are saying derogatory and negative things. So do better, Minnesota fans. And I understand it's difficult, but it is what it is, dude. And I hate to bring this up to Minnesota fans, but another one of their players transferred, as this was announced on the 23rd, as this was announced on Wednesday or on Friday, as Jenna Wenes, the former Minnesota outside hitter, she is now transferred to none other than Texas. So here's Wenes's backstory. Wenes actually is from Texas, so transferring back home kind of makes sense. Some people were hinting that she is transferring to Texas, and there it is. So the fact that I understand that it's kind of a little cheeky that she transferred to the national champion, but it is what it is. And the fact that she gets to go back home is quite something. And then I also got a little bit of a leak saying that there's just not enough players to field just because they've got other incoming talent, and then it could also be because of scholarship issues. She is a junior, so she's got 2 more years of eligibility left. So yeah, Jenna Wenes is going to do wonders, especially since Texas is losing Logan Eggleston. So that's big time for Texas getting Jenna Wenes. Jumping over to SEC country, we have Anna Dixon, an outside hitter / opposite and is a graduate student. She is transferring from Missouri over to Florida. Now, this is a huge get for Florida just because, remember, Merritt Beeson actually entered the transfer portal last week with Birdie Hendrickson. But to get Anna Dixon is huge for that program. She is big time right there. She was second in kills last year, and she was one of the bright spots that Missouri had. One of the few bright spots, might I add, but I digress. So for Anna Dixon to transfer to Florida is very convenient, just because Merritt Beeson left to go into the transfer portal. And that's actually a perfect segue to go into this next little topic. So Merritt Beeson actually found her new home, as this was announced on Christmas Eve, as Merritt Beeson is transferring to Nebraska. Now, that is huge because Merritt Beeson is a 6th rotation player, and she brings a lot of dynamic and a lot of experience to this Nebraska team, which has a lot of young players. And I really think that Merritt Beeson is going to be huge. Don't be surprised if Birdie Hendrickson transfers over to Nebraska as well, because Birdie Hendrickson did have that Instagram post that said "till the end" with Merritt Beeson. Now, I don't know what went down with Merritt Beeson and Birdie Hendrickson to have them transfer from Florida, but I won't be surprised if Birdie Hendrickson transfers, just because Nebraska is in need of a center. Now, I did hear that Bergen Riley is also committed to Nebraska, and she is one of the top players in the 2023 high school recruiting class, and she's going to be going to Nebraska, and she has championship pedigree with the U.S. Youth National Team. But I would not be surprised if Birdie Hendrickson went to Nebraska, just because that post, now this is just me speculating, but that post that said "till the end" with a picture of her and Birdie Hendrickson makes a whole lot of sense. And you can't they pretty much transferred or went into the transfer portal at the same time. Again, this is just speculation. I'm not going to say that it's confirmed, but don't be surprised if Birdie Hendrickson goes to Nebraska as well. And for Bergen Riley, she's a 6'3" setter, so I'm fairly certain she brings a lot of setting and blocking and arm capability for the Huskers this year, or this next upcoming year. Anyway, jumping back to Big 12 country, we have Riley Buckley, the sophomore setter, or the freshman setter from Missouri, who is transferring to TCU. So this is huge for TCU just because they lost their other setter, as their starting setter from this year. She graduated, and Callie Williams and Mackenzie Nichols are basically the two setters that departed from TCU. So for Riley Buckley, she goes to a TCU team that actually made some noise in the Big 12. Now, this was a TCU team that had to contend with the likes of Texas and Baylor. The fact that they finished in the top 4 of the fourth place in the Big 12 is a huge deal, and the fact that they were able to accomplish that feat is big, especially in a competitive conference like that. Staying in Big 12 country, but jumping over to the SEC, we have Megan Wilson, an outside hitter / opposite. She is actually transferring from Oklahoma to Kentucky, as she actually was the kill leader for Oklahoma last year. So this is huge for Kentucky. And this means that Kentucky is probably going to reestablish themselves as one of the top teams in the SEC. Everyone thought that Kentucky was going to take a step back. No. They actually did really well this year, tying for atop the conference, the SEC, and they also made it to the Sweet 16, and they have this big-time player coming in, and they only lose one top player in Adana Rollins. Azani Taylor comes back, and they return a majority of their top players from last season. So that's big time to get Megan Wilson. Obviously, it's a tough one for Oklahoma. I'll be talking about Oklahoma in a little bit, but for Oklahoma, it's tough to lose one of their top players, especially since they just recently hired their coach. You'll see. Jumping over to Pac-12 country, we have Cara McGee transferring from Baylor over to Oregon. Now, that's big time for Oregon just because Cara McGee is a veteran in terms of NCAA women's volleyball tournament experience. She was a part of that Baylor team that made it all the way to the Final Four back in 2019. She has dubious immortality in terms of experience. She played with some of the best, like Yassiana Presley. I think Cara McGee is going to do wonders at the middle blocker position. The only qualm could be will she immediately be starting at the middle blocker position? That's still basically the million-dollar question, but I'm sure she'll be able to work her way into the offense. And I think that is pretty much that in terms of all of the notable... Oh, we have one more. Well, two more, actually. We have two more big-time transfers into the transfer portal. We have Layla Ricks that just popped up into the transfer portal. She was 4th on the team in kills and 2nd on the team in blocks for Maryland this year. Now, Maryland had themselves quite the year, beating teams like Ohio State and Purdue. So for her to pop up in the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility left is a little concerning. But we'll see what happens for Layla Ricks, as whoever gets her, I think she's going to do wonders for that said team. And then the last notable player that popped up in the transfer portal is Hannah Lesiak. She is an outside hitter. She's a graduate student from Northwestern. So much like Desiree Becker, she's also looking to finish off her college career. She was actually 2nd in kills at Northwestern, as she definitely aided Temi Thomas Ilara in terms of the offense. So for me, I really think that Hannah Lasiak is going to do wonders for a team that did well in terms of its offense. Like, she's going to do great things for whichever team that she goes to. And it's not because Northwestern didn't make the NCAA tournament after pulling off a majority of great wins. It's just because Northwestern probably doesn't have enough scholarships, or they just don't have the graduation program for her. So please, Northwestern fans, don't say, oh, she's betraying us, or she wants to go elsewhere to ring hunt. No, it's not like that. All right, so that's that for all the transfer news in the NCAA women's volleyball world. Jumping over to the NCAA women's volleyball coaching changes. So we had 4 coaching moves from before the show started all the way to last show. So we'll start off with the first coaching move. We had Vanderbilt hiring Kentucky assistant coach Anders Nelson. Nelson was the assistant coach for Kentucky for the past 11 years. He helped lead Craig Skinner and the Wildcats to a national championship back in the spring of 2021, aka the COVID year. And honestly, I think this is a good hire. He stays within the conference. He now knows what Kentucky has. He now knows what Kentucky can do. The only thing for Vanderbilt is that they have to wait until when Texas and Oklahoma transfer to the SEC from the Big 12. But overall, I think this is a good hire. Anders, I think, is a great assistant coach, and Kentucky's definitely going to be missing him, but Vanderbilt is getting a good one. So keep on the lookout for Vanderbilt once Texas and Oklahoma head on over from Big 12 country to SEC country. Speaking of Big 12 country, Oklahoma has hired its new coach, Aaron Mansfeld, as, if you're familiar with that name, Aaron Mansfeld, this was announced on the day before Christmas Eve, by the way. So Aaron Mansfeld is actually the former head coach at LMU, and Mansfeld went 94-68 with the Lions the last 6 seasons, and those 2 seasons include NCAA tournament appearances, which actually included an NCAA tournament win. Unfortunately for LMU, they didn't really get farther than the round of 32, but in 2018, LMU swept then number 1 BYU in their last regular season game, which was absolutely quite astounding. So I think Oklahoma getting Aaron Mansfield is a huge, huge get for them. I think that for Mansfield, I think he could turn around LMU he could turn around Oklahoma like he did LMU. Granted, LMU had some NCAA tournament success before Mansfield came along, but I really think that Mansfield is going to do wonders for Oklahoma, just because Oklahoma has seen better days. They've had a couple Sweet 16 appearances in the past, but not anything as of late. They are getting one really good incoming freshman in that one top player from Redondo Union, who Melee something. Either way, they're getting that one of the top players in the class of 2023. Melee Koral Blagojevic. That's what I'm thinking. It's been a while since I've covered high school girls volleyball, but I digress. So Adam Karnick actually asked a question in the chat room. He says, do volleyball programs have frequent turnover like the other sports, or do they last longer for the coaches? So that's a very good question. I think it all depends on certain contracts and then their certain and how they're doing in terms of their progression. And if a certain coach is not meeting expectations, then they're probably going to get shown the door. But if not, then they're probably going to stay longer. So we'll see. That is a pretty good question, honestly. I would say that they last a little longer, but again, it all depends on their contract and how they're progressing with their team. All right, jumping over to Christmas Eve, this was announced that Oregon State had hired former Pitt assistant coach Lindsey Bihonik after she spent 10 years with the Panthers, which included 7 straight NCAA tournament appearances and back-to-back Final Fours. So this is kind of it's a good hire. I mean, assistant coach hires are not terrible. I think they're actually underrated, and you're seeing what Vanderbilt's doing. They hired the assistant coach for Kentucky. I think Oregon State can have some success with Lindsey Bihonik after their longtime head coach, who I think coached for like 20-some years, stepped down. So I think Bihonik can really turn Oregon State around because they can't really get too much worse because Oregon State finished pretty much near the bottom of the Pac-12. So Oregon State can only go up from here. The only way they can get progressively worse is if they lose to Cal. And this is no offense to Cal, by the way. And then the last most recent coaching change or coaching hire in terms of coaches, which was announced today, was Leslie Gabriel being the new head coach at Washington. So Leslie Gabriel actually is a former player at Washington, and she was the assistant coach at Washington as basically she had been there for, get this, over 20 seasons, and she has been around for quite long, and here's what her resume looks like. She was the 2020 AVCA Assistant Coach of the Year, and she's been an assistant coach ever since 2001. So she's been there for 22 years as an assistant coach. And Washington, for those that don't know, they've made the NCAA tournament 21 straight times, which is the 5th all-time in NCAA women's volleyball history. So if you're keeping score, Leslie Gabriel has been a part of all 21 of those NCAA tournament appearances, and Washington has only missed the postseason once, which was back in Leslie Gabriel's first year as assistant coach. So for Leslie Gabriel, she definitely is a big-time hire right there. I think it's a good hire just because they hire her within the program. They don't have to go far. Well, they obviously conducted a national search, but the athletic director said Leslie Gabriel is the perfect one for this job. And she's a former player. She was an assistant coach. She knows the program through its ins and outs. She's the perfect one. And also something else to make note of, she's been part of 618 wins with Washington as a player and as an assistant coach, which I think is a big deal right there. So I think for Leslie Gabriel, it's big time for her just because she said it's been a dream to be the head coach at Washington. And she obviously has done well under the previous 2 head coaches in Keegan Cook and Kevin McLaughlin, I think his name is. Kevin McLaughlin. So I really think it's big time that they hired Leslie Gabriel as their new head coach, and I'm excited to see what she can do. Will Washington have success immediately? That all depends on what their team looks like post non-conference play and what their team looks like depending on if their team is not going to be injury-riddled like it was last year. Well, not like injury-riddled, but still just injured in terms of its key players, in terms of Maddie Ensley, but I digress. All right, so that is going to do it for all the NCAA women's volleyball coaching news. So before I head on out of here, I have to go over all of Set Point's accomplishments, just because this is the last week of the 2002 calendar year, and after this year, we start 2023. So here, for Set Point, a lot of Set Point actually accomplished quite a bit. Now, obviously, Set Point isn't as big time as I want it to be, and it's not where I want it to be. I want it to be well known all over the place instead of just being known to a T. But I want to be like big time. I really hope I can get Set Point to being known all over the world, and hopefully I can make it big time, like some of the other volleyball podcasts in this world. Like, my goal for 2023 is to go to an AVCA convention, which would be held in Tampa. That way I could spread the word about Set Point, and basically I can tell everybody that Set Point covers all things volleyball. But for Set Point's accomplishments in 2022, Set Point went to the NVA playoffs, or covered the NVA playoffs back in August. Yes, the National Volleyball Association playoffs. And I made connections with the NVA coaches and players and Nick England, who I'm hoping Set Point and what's their face? Set Point and the NVA can still remain partners, because long term and then some. Just because I think it would be big for Set Point and for the NVA, because the NVA is still in its infancy stages, but it's still going to be growing. Like, there's 13 teams, and there are big things on the horizon for the NVA, and hopefully there will be some big things on the horizon for Set Point. We're both still looking to grow, and who knows, maybe we can get IE Sports Radio involved in the partnership, but time will tell. So another one of Set Point's accomplishments was going to an AVP tournament. So AVP tournaments are so tough to come by just because I'm so busy and I don't really drive, and it's just, there's not too many in my neck of the woods. There was, however, one in November where the Huntington Beach Open took place, and it was big time going to day 2 of that tournament. I would have liked to have gone to day 1, but day 1 is basically just qualifications. Like, there's like preliminaries, and then there's qualifications, and then there's day 2 where it's basically Championship Sunday or Saturday, depending on when they start. But I went to day 2. I immediately saw Sarah Hughes. I made connections with her and Kelly Cheng. I even got to interview them after their tournament. I even got to see my buddy Avery Dross do his thing. Unfortunately, he and his partner lost in the finals, but they were facing Team Taylor Sander, and Taylor Crabb. But I wish I could have made even more connections with the AVP, with like its organizers and with its like head honcho, and told them that Set Point also covers the AVP. I even told Sarah Hughes and Kelly Cheng that Set Point covers the AVP, unlike some of these other volleyball podcasts. I'm not trying to call anyone out. I'm just saying that the AVP deserves some love. That's just my take. But for those that do cover the AVP, good on ya. I'm not trying to stir the pot or anything, I promise. And then another accomplishment that Set Point had was going to the CIF State Open Division Finals. And this was an accomplishment. I know it's high school volleyball, but these are the NCAA volleyball players of tomorrow who could be the professional volleyball players of tomorrow. So for this CIF State Open Division Championship, it was Cathedral Catholic versus St. Francis. Cathedral Catholic from San Diego, they were 41-0, and then St. Francis from Mountain View, they were Northern California's representative. They were 31-0. If you're keeping score, these two teams were a combined 75-0. 75 wins, 0 losses going into this final, the CIF State Open Division Final. And for Cathedral Catholic to come out on top, it's a reason why their season was special. And there was a reason why I covered this game. Yes, I had to spend money on this. No, I don't care. I want to cover this game just because Cathedral Catholic only lost one set all year. And that was in the previous round to Miracosta of Manhattan Beach. So for Cathedral Catholic, I'm glad I was able to witness its special season. Yes, I know people are going to say, well, they're a private school, they use transfers, but look at what Texas did. Like, I understand people have qualms with transferring and whatnot, but still, look at what Mater Dei has done in terms of girls volleyball, or Sierra Canyon. Like, come on. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to stir the pot, I'm just saying, you got to give credit where credit is due. And that Cathedral Catholic became the first team since Lake Travis to only lose one set an entire season. Lake Travis of Texas was able to only lose one set back in 2011. And believe it or not, that was actually in the semifinals of their state championship as well. So, yeah. But it was amazing interviewing all the Cathedral Catholic players, well, a couple of them to say the least. I also wish Julia Blyshov was not hurt. I think she would have made a great interview, but she was just soaking it all in terms of her winning the CIF State Championship, because she was the heartbeat of that team. And to Cathedral Catholic's credit, they performed well despite Julia Blyshov getting hurt. So that's pretty much it for all of set points accomplishments. I didn't include going to the Long Beach State and UC Irvine volleyball matches just because, well, shout out to the SIDs for allowing me to attend as a member of the media. But I want to say that's it in terms of accomplishments. I guess one more accomplishment would be throwing Set Point's name into the Grant Berger Media Award hat, which never got announced. Throwing Set Point's name into the Grant Berger Media Award hat was also something. Still waiting word on if I won, but hey, that's a step in the right direction. Also, shout out to Larry B for nominating me as well. I appreciate you, brother. He says so many reasons why Set Point is awesome. And I think that is it for all of Set Point's accomplishments. There will be more accomplishments next year, I promise you. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, on a boat, with a goat, on a plane, with a crane, here or there, anywhere, in the sky, underground, I really do appreciate you. Shout out to Larry B, Arthur Parsons, Adam Carnick, Mike Cat, as well as David Crook, and also Jason Saul for popping in the chat room, the live chat room. It really means a lot. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great New Year's. Happy belated holidays to everyone. Happy first day of quarantine for those that celebrate. Thank you, everyone, for all of your support. I promise you, Set Point is going to be big time next year. I promise you, there will be big things for Set Point. I'm going to make sure that Set Point is well known for all volleyball fans. I promise you. One of my 2023 goals is to go to an AVCA convention. Will it be easy? No, but I will persevere. Have yourself a great New Year's. I will see you all Thursday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And I will see you all next year for Set Point. Have a great weekend. Peace!